Feelings of fear about the future of the United States are nothing new. In fact, you can trace them back practically to any point in our country's history. Equally important, feelings of fear about the future of mankind are integral to all of our past. You can go back any century or period that you want. This is a common fear. You read Plato's writing from 2,400 years ago, and Plato wrote that the world was sweetly ordered in his youth and was now rapidly going to hell in a handbasket, although he didn't actually use the Greek word for handbasket. That was the sentiment that he expressed. I'm basically an optimist, although not a Pollyanna. Let me talk first about the things that I'm optimistic about. If we step back from our concerns of the moment, and of course the United States has many current problems, the larger arc of history is mainly positive. We think about recent decades. Lifespans have been increasing, education levels have been increasing around the world, especially for girls and women, which is essentially the developing world. A lot of the things that I'm optimistic about have more to do with the developing world than the United States and European Union. Freedom is spreading in most nations, obviously not all. It's a halting battle, but democracy is winning the struggle of ideas. And the more democracy spreads, the more the globe will become a happy and prosperous place. Communication is improving, becoming very cheap, very practical. Parts of the world are getting to know other parts of the world. The more that we know each other, the less that we will fear each other. Information is becoming more readily available than it's ever been in the past. I actually think that Google is going, whatever you think of Google, I think they're going to succeed in their project of making all public information available to everyone at no cost. I think that's actually going to happen, and it's going to happen within our lifetimes, not over a course line of centuries. I think most trends are positive for most people, especially in the developing world, but for most people here in the United States also. Now, many people don't like the fact that globalized economics is the motive force for some, although of course not all of this, some of it would have happened regardless. But I think if you feel that way, you have to ask yourself the question compared to what? If we hadn't had liberal trade policies in the last 30 years, would we like the results any better than the situation we have now? Certainly we would have much higher impoverishment in the developing world if we hadn't had liberal trade policies. And I'll give you United Nations statistics. 30 years ago, there were 2.5 billion people living at the level that the United Nations calls medium developed. That's roughly middle class. Today, there are 4.2 billion people at that level. Of the 2.2 billion people who have joined the human family in the last 30 years, and that's a number that makes your head spin. That's more than the total number of people who are alive in the year 1900. But of those people, 85% have joined at the level of medium development, or roughly middle class. It's a tremendous sociological achievement. Again, United Nations figure 30 years ago, there were 1.3 billion people living in impoverishment, defined as, in today's dollars, $1 per day or less. Now the figure's down to 500 million. Still a shocking figure. I mean, 500 million people living in that level of poverty, but it's less than half what it was 30 years ago, during a period when the human population has exploded. So, lots of problems, yes, but will we like it any better if global international trade had not come along and caused the developing world, or at least been a big factor in the extremely rapid development of China and India? I don't think we would like it any better at all. I think we'd like it a lot worse. If we hadn't had global trade, we would also not have the superpower relationship that exists between the United States and China now. There has never been a superpower relationship that is not fundamentally based on military competition until the United States and China. There are all kinds of problems with our relationship with China. Many of us think the Chinese government is creepy, and guess what? It is creepy. And there are all kinds of human rights problems in China. But for the world's two largest and most powerful nations not to be competing on military power, to be competing economically, is a new development. Is it a permanent fix for the world's problems? I don't know. Certainly, if you read commentary written in the late 19th century, many people believe that economic interconnectedness then would prevent future war, and what happened in World War I. So it's no guarantee, but it's certainly a positive sign. Global arms, this is one of my favorite facts. In fact, if I had to pick a favorite fact in the world, this is my favorite fact. People don't know this. Global arms spending has been declining on a linear basis for 25 years. If you adjust to today's dollars, per capita, the world spends 40% less on militarism than it did 25 years ago. Here, I'll give you all the supporting detail for this is, of course, in sonic boom, which I have to hold up. Now I've held it up. Combat has declined in the world on an almost linear basis for about 20 years. We see the spectacular exception of the terrible war in Iraq and the semi-war in Afghanistan and what's going on in Sudan. Obviously, there are places where organized violence continues, but overall, the number of wars in the world, the intensity of wars in the world, and the casualties in wars in the world has declined not every year, but almost every year for the last 25 years. Now, the main thing, of course, is the end of proxy wars caused by the Cold War. But I think economic interconnectedness is also helping. Nations increasingly are more concerned with market share than with acquiring territory. And it's not a perfect solution to the world's problems, but it's so preferable to militarism, there's no comparison between the two.